Amazing. Welcome in, everyone. Hello, hello. I see Grace and Jen, Cara, Carrie. Welcome in, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes, I'm seeing some thumbs up. That's beautiful. Excellent.
Yes, can hear you.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I'm going to give everyone a couple minutes to start coming in the room. And while I do that, or while we do that, I just want to invite you all to go ahead and try out your chat box over there and make sure it's working. Maybe just say hello. Let us know where you're coming from, where you're joining us from. It's always a fun thing. And that way we can know that you're able to talk to us. Because as always, this is going to be an interactive event. And so we would love to be able to hear from you. And beautiful, excellent. Greetings from San Antonio. Hi, Jess. Yay. South Carolina. Fun. Julie's from Portland, same as me. Canada, North Carolina, Missouri, Richmond, Virginia. It's pretty close to where Sarah is. Excellent. Awesome. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. And I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of a breakdown here. And let you know a little bit about how this event is going to work, so that you just know kind of what to expect and how to interact with us. So first of all, before we dive into that, I just want to invite you in and give you a little bit of context for this whole project, because I'm not sure how recently you found us, or if you've been kind of following along this whole way, but I just first want to talk about the reason that we're doing all of this. And so my purpose and my mission with this entire Shadow Side Leadership Project was really to begin working to normalize and celebrate the shadow sides of our own humanity. Right. And that was what we did a lot with our podcast series, which you guys can go listen to. There's some amazing podcasts and stories, and just so much encouragement and inspiration inside of those from all of these panelists and presenters and coaches. And so, but the second part of this project that I really wanted to bring to life was this more tangible meaningful support for all of you, to help you really navigate those experiences in your own life, and also to create more meaningful connection, right? Greater levels of joy and momentum. And so in your life and in your businesses. And so that's what this portion of this project is all about. That's what this Shadow Side Leadership Summit is really all about. And so for those of you that do not yet know me, my name is Robin Kiesler, and I can see that the link to the podcast just got put in there. So that's amazing. Thank you so much. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Robin. I'm an identity coach for seekers and healers and change makers that have something important to do in the world. And I believe that applies to all of us, right? So I help my clients reduce resistance and really increase their ease and effectiveness in their lives and in their businesses through the art of radical self-love and personal healing. And also embodiment, right? I do a lot of work around embodiment, not just of your future self, even though that's beautiful and I love that work, but also with that true identity that is our source, right? That is your power and in my opinion, your unshakable foundation for the kind of joy that you want to have in your life, in your relationships, but also for the success that you want to have in your business, right? I think it plays so powerfully into what allows us to be effective and to think creatively and all of that. So identity work is very important to me. It's a core piece of the work that I do. And I really hope to be able to share a lot of that with you today. So that's me. That's this project. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being a part of this. And now I want to talk about how this is going to work. Okay. So this is going to be an interactive event. Like I said, this is not me up here on a pedestal teaching, right? I do not love that leadership model, right? I want to invite you as individuals to really be able to explore and discover for yourself what's inside of you, right? What's inside of you that you want to find answers to, and in that wisdom that you already have. And so that's really what I want to invite you to think about, to ask questions about, to answer those questions for yourself, and to explore your life in a way that will allow you to have some really important breakthroughs. So interactive means use that chat box that you've just uncovered, right? So Q&A time, absolutely. If you have any questions, you're listening to these presentations, as I'm teaching, as Sarah or Dex or Jessica, as anyone's teaching, you don't need to wait until the end. Just go ahead and go to that chat box and just hashtag question. Hey, I have a question. I'd love to talk about this. Or if there's something that you want coaching on, hashtag coaching. Type it in the chat box and what you would love to have some coaching time on and talk about one-on-one. Because at the end of these presentations and at the end of this day, we're going to have designated time to be able to pull out those questions and do some live Q&A, some live coaching. And so if you type them in as you go, not only will you not forget your question, but we'll be able to copy paste that. Those presenters are going to be able to collect those, and then we'll pull them up at the end. And also, if there's anything we don't have time for, we can answer them in the Facebook group. And we can also, I'm going to be creating more live coaching opportunities next month as we move on. This is not a one and done kind of thing. And so we'll be able to create content and topics around that for you to really help you get the answers that you're looking for and the most value. Does that make sense to everyone? And if there's things that you love, if there's reflections, if there's aha moments, if there's things that you appreciated, let us know that too, because it's fun for us to hear, but also it lets us know what you're enjoying, what's useful to you. And so again, as we really hone and improve this entire project, and as we keep going and get ready for next year, it'll give us an idea of what you guys liked, what you appreciated, and what was useful. How does that sound? Yeah? Okay, excellent. All right. Having said that, today, the topic that we're talking about today is connection, right? Nurturing connection. And the topic that I would like to present to you is something that has been powerful and profound for me in nurturing connection. And so I'm going to be teaching you today how to nurture connection through your divine energy and identity. And I want to start with just taking a moment to think about a time in your life where you felt or experienced meaningful connection, maybe intimate connection, right? Can you go to a moment where you felt or experienced that kind of true, meaningful connection in your life? And just notice how it feels. Notice how it feels in your body. What that feels like. Can you notice how your whole heart and your soul, just that full body, yes, please, to that idea of connection? Can you sense it? When you saw this topic, nurturing connection through your divine identity, what happens inside your body? Do you get excited? And what would be the reason for that? Why does that turn us on so much, that idea of connection? And I would offer that it's because it's a core human need. It's essential not only to our well-being and to our sense of joy and fulfillment, but it's also essential for our effectiveness, right? And like we talked about, creativity, and there's so many benefits when we experience that kind of connection. It calms down our nervous system. It allows us to think more clearly, right? There's so many things. But what I want to focus on the most today, because if you can sense that desire inside of you for connection and how amazing it feels, you already know that it's important. So now what I want to talk about today is, how do we get that need met, right? So when we think about connection and why we love it, let's notice the ways. What are the methods that you use in your life to get that need met? Take a minute and type in the chat box for me. What are the methods that you use to create connection in your life with others? Yes, it feels whole to me, like it's why I'm here. Yeah. Reaching out, right, to other people, random acts of kindness. Yeah. What else? What are the ways that we work to create connection? Making a phone call, maybe going to a meetup or a happy hour, right? Maybe you hop on the apps, find a date. just notice what are the strategies that you use to create that connection, right? Through animals, being around nature, okay. Yeah, I have to work to connect to humans. Friendships, phone calls, quality time. Yeah. So for me, as a young child, I would say that I actually developed a lot of strategies early on for securing human connection. And part of that is because when I experience connection, there's the opposite of connection is that rejection, right? Which is a deep wound for me and for everyone. We don't want to be isolated. I think there's a lot of reasons that connection is really wired into us as humans to have that. But there's an element of belonging when we experience connection, isn't there? There's that element of acceptance that feels so amazing. And so for me, what I noticed was that when I was working really hard, right? I remember as a little kid, people saying, "Oh, you're such a hard worker," right? That hit of approval. And people would want me around, right? My teachers kind of put me on a pedestal a little bit, and it created a little bit of that feeling of connection. I'm not being isolated. I'm not being rejected. I'm being brought in if I'm a hard worker. People pleasing was a big one, right? I started learning early on these strategies. Even neediness or becoming emotionally dysregulated, right? When I look at protective personalities and the masks that we wear, I'll never forget the first time having a meltdown got my mom's attention and that nurturing that I needed, right? Single mom with 5 kids, easy to get lost in the shuffle if you're being stable and you're taken care of and there's not an emergency, right? And so that strategy stayed in my toolbox for nearly 28 years. And it affected so many of my relationships. And so I think we develop so many masks, right? Masks and protective personalities, so many strategies that we end up developing in order to create that connection. Who can relate to this? Anybody? Anybody have strategies like that? Question, how to overcome fear of connection. Super interesting. Yeah, let's talk about that. I hid my emotions because I was afraid no one would like me unless I was happy all the time. Right. Totally. You kind of become an isolator. Okay. So noticing that when we look around at the world, especially as children, we start to shape shift, right? And we start to develop these strategies for connection. Even something as simple, like you said, as reaching out to other people. There's lots of simple and complex ways that we do this. But now, if you've taken a minute to kind of think about that for yourself, what are my strategies? Now, my question for you is this: what are the downsides to those strategies? What are the downsides? What are the frustrations, the insecurities, right? Maybe the painful byproducts that those strategies or those patterns come with. So for me, I notice when I fall into these patterns or use these strategies of reaching out for connection in these external ways, there are several problems that we run into. The one that I want to talk about primarily today is, I think, the least acknowledged. And it's this very subtle problem that I believe makes it somewhat insidious. And it's when we look at this model of reaching out, of seeking connection, right? And that problem is that wherever you're getting your needs met from is what controls you. Wherever you're getting your needs met from, that thing will have control over you. And so if your umbilical cord is attached to another human, then you lose your power, your security, and really your sovereignty. Because you know that if you lose them, that means you lose that essential life force. It's like someone stepping on your air hose. Who's ever felt that way? I reach out, I get the connection, oh, it feels so good, my whole nervous system. But I can't control that source. And so there's a sense, it's a very scary thing. And that, in fact, it can be the thing that drives us to work so hard, to work, even to force, to fight, to manipulate, to shapeshift at any cost in order to maintain or secure that vital connection. Are we tracking? Anyone relate to that? Yeah. And there's dozens and dozens of other side effects as well, right? But I think that's the one that we forget about the most. Right? We don't feel accepted for the true you, right? Because you're having to hide, pretend, appease, so that a connection doesn't feel genuine. You don't feel like you're even really connected to your own true self because you're so busy self-rejecting parts of you so that you can be accepted, right? Like someone said earlier, I think if they see the real me, right? And so when you're doing that, you actually, it feels double lonely. Again, you end up living in fear that you're going to lose it. If I don't show up right, if they find out, if they see anything unacceptable, I'm going to be toast. And so it's exhausting because you're constantly assessing, surveying, judging, measuring, comparing, worrying, working your ass off, right? To earn just any version of connection. And for me personally, this is what kept me in abusive relationships, right, for many years, due to this one driving force, because I just needed it, and it was at all cost. Who's tracking? Who's with me? Yeah. So this is my question then. What's the answer? If my thesis is true, and if reaching out for connection is not the answer, if it comes with all these problematic pain points, right, then what is the answer? What do we do instead? What's the alternative? And this, my friends, is where I want to talk about the deficit connection loop versus the divine connection loop. So there are two basic pathways to meeting this essential need for connection. Two basic pathways that I see. The first is what I call the deficit connection loop. And this is how it works. Up here, you've got what I'm going to call your source. And over here, you have your ego self. Who understands what that means? Is there anybody that does not understand what that means? And over here, you have other people. Are you guys able to read this? Can you see that diagram? Okay. So up here is your little red triangle, your source. If you guys do not know yet, this little red triangle is my everything. And this represents your true identity. Represents your true identity. Some people call it your inner being, right? Your source, your highest self. It is your essence, the love, the light that is the truth of who you really are. So I'm going to briefly just give you an overview of what these two approaches, what these two pathways look like. And then we're going to jump into exploring just a short practice about what this latter divine connection can look like instead. The ego is like the thoughts we think about ourselves, the shoulds. Okay. Yeah. And I think the ego self also includes, Amber, a lot of the ways that we define ourselves, right? So when we talk about the ego self as well, it's our thoughts, right, about ourselves. And I think there's also all these other ways that we identify ourselves, right? I'm a mother, I'm a paramedic, I'm a life coach, I'm a worrier, I'm a perfectionist, right? And so I think we oftentimes identify with personality traits, behaviors, right? Different external things that define this body of mine, right? This body is like a container, a way to understand who I am in the world. So let's first talk about this deficit connection loop, because this is the one that I think many people fall into and they don't really realize what's happening. And so when you're in this deficit connection loop, this is when you're using that model of reaching out from yourself to another person for connection, right? And so you're trying to go from your ego self over here, right? I'm here and I need to get here. I need to create this connection with another human. So I'm going to come over here and try to make that happen. I'm going to reach out. And when we're reaching out, like I said, there's so many ways that this can look like. People pleasing, right? Gossip even. Right? I remember one time feeling, I was gossiping with someone about another person. And I felt so bad afterwards, so much guilt around that. And later I was like, why would I even do that? It doesn't feel good to me. That's not who I am. And I realized later, oh, I was seeking connection. Because in that moment, it was a cheap, shitty version of it. But I tell you what, that person, they were paying attention. They were leaning in. They cared about what I had to say. I mattered for a minute, right? So can anyone relate to that? These things that we do to try and create this connection. And there's so many other things, right? Overworking. There's a lot of things that we can do down here where we try to create that. But what happens is we're seeking, we're searching, we're grasping, right? We need it, even sometimes manipulating, right? Ourselves or another person, the way that we appear. And the most common outcomes that I see from this deficit loop, right? This is what I would call the deficit connection loop. Because it's coming from a deficit, right? There's something that I need that I don't have. Something that I need that I don't have. And so I'm going to employ all these strategies to try and get it. And the most common outcomes that I see from this are first, that sense of fear and insecurity, like we talked about, because even if you do get it, that source is unstable, right? It's not secure. You could lose it. The other thing I see a lot is that it feels empty or unfulfilled, because you're really meeting on depleted soil when you're down here, right? It's all based on that deficit need. Who's had that happen where you're surrounded with people, but you feel so lonely in the inside? Why? Because when you're not connected to your source, none of it matters. None of it matters. You're still missing that thing. You still have that sense of that deficit, right? And I'm not even connected to myself. And so it can never fulfill that need. And so that longing is still there. And that sense of emptiness or unfulfilled self, right, is extraordinarily painful. This is the same thing when you see people that they reach their 6-figure salary in their coaching business. They reach their 100K, their $1 million mark. The mark keeps moving. Why is it never enough? Why is it never enough? Because of this right here. It's still coming from that deficit motivation. The last thing I'll talk about is conflict, right? Because these people are also coming to you for the same damn thing. Right? Bam. Neither one of us are connected to that source. We're both in that seeking, searching, grasping, needing energy, and that clash, that conflict, because we're both seeking from the other person something that is not designed to come from them. Can you feel it? Who's ever had somebody, that quote unquote needy person, and you feel like you're drowning? You feel suffocated. right? It causes all kinds of conflict, or the other way around, right? There's so many ways that this shows up, and it lends very quickly and easily to blaming, right? To resentment, to shame, all kinds of hurt and manipulation. Someone said, yes, that's my husband. Okay. Yeah, totally. One thing I've recently learned about myself is that I push someone away in the hopes that they will draw closer. Yeah, so your ego self. Insecure attachment. Yeah. This is my husband big time. Yeah. So just notice that, right? So that's what I just want to show you first, is that deficit loop, right? And also because when we are seeing ourselves through that shattered lens of ego, we see the world that way too. So when it comes to the shadow side, right, this is where so much projection happens, right? When we're seeing ourselves this way, we see others that way, and vice versa. So we're all wearing these glasses, and it's very difficult to have these meaningful, fulfilling relationships from this deficit connection loop where we're reaching out to another person in that way. The good news is, of course, that there's another way. Who saw that coming? Anybody? Oh, good. Whew. All right. Yeah, there's another option. And this is the option that I would like to invite us to look into. This is one of my favorite quotes by Rumi. And I'm sure you've heard it before, right? My incense is getting in my face. Rumi says, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I will meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. Out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field. I will meet you there. And so, this is the road to creating divine connection. When we let go of this, and we learn, instead of reaching out, when we learn to come home to ourselves, to the truth of who we really are, notice all of this can go away. Notice how much energy you no longer have to exert. And when you can take this ego self and move it right on up here into alignment with the source of who you truly are, notice what happens when you bring your ego self right up here and you connect it and you align it with your source, with your inner being, with your divine nature. This is where you live from. And all of a sudden, when you're standing in that field, I heard a quote, read a quote a long time ago from C.S. Lewis in his book. I think it was the Screwtape Letters. Not any comment on C.S. Lewis. However, when I was a kid, I read those books, and I remember him describing a relationship in one of these books. And this person said to the other, they said, I have no need of you. We have no need of each other anymore. And so now I can love you fully. Right? That's the difference of divine connection. And so when you're standing here, when you are divinely connected to the truth of who you are, you become secure in your identity, in your worthiness, in your light, in your love, your power, your very essence. When you are connected to that, your umbilical cord is no longer attached to the external source that you can't control. And so you become powerful and truly sovereign in your life. You get to make choices that you want, that feel good to you, that are in alignment with your desire, your destiny, because you're attached to your source. And here's the other thing. When you stand securely in that field, you don't have to go seek anyone out, because others that are also securely attached to their source, they will meet you there. They will meet you there. Notice how that feels. Because when you stand in this field, and the world is also standing in that field with you, you see yourself through the eyes of Source. And the way that you see yourself is also the way that you will see others. And so you are also seeing the world. You're seeing your business, your clients, your money, your body, your finances, your problems, your pains, your struggles, your personality, your shadows, your children, your lovers, your relationships. Everything is seen through the eyes of Source. Everything is seen through the eyes of love, of enoughness, of possibility, of hope, of light, of joy. Can you sense it? Can you feel that? It changes everything. And not only are you seeing yourself and the world that way, these that have come are also seeing you that way. Who knows the difference when you talk to somebody who fucking loves you, adores you, because they're seeing you through the eyes of Source. They're not projecting their ego shit onto you. And you are not doing that to them, because you are both secure, standing in your love, in your source, in your inner being, in that truth of who you really are. That's the power of identity. It becomes the most powerful, the most meaningful, and truly joyful connections that you can imagine, because it's all based on that divine energy and identity of enoughness and your mutual connection in that. It allows you to connect more lovingly, more easily. Where are we at so far? Yes, I'm thinking of it as my cup is already full. I don't need you to fill it up for me. Your cup is also full, right? And so we just get to come together, and it's a good time. It's such a good time, Sarah. Yeah, right? And it doesn't mean that we have to disconnect. We still get to have those relationships with others, but it's totally different, right? And this is the divine connection, right? That I want to invite all of us into. Right? And this is that divine connection loop. Because instead of trying to come all the way around to get home to the who you really are, you can just come right here, and they'll just meet you there. You don't have to pull them up that hill. You don't have to drag anybody. So, who would like to practice that? You guys like to spend a little bit of time doing that today? Maybe spend a little bit of time practicing what it would feel like to connect to that divine energy. See what it might feel like to see yourself that way. Who feels like they already do? It's okay. There's no right or wrong answer. Who feels like there's room to grow? Some of the time, yeah. Anybody feel like they could use a little practice, a little help? Some days, yes. Some days not by a long shot. Yeah. Yeah. Always room to grow. Okay. All right. So this is what I would like to invite us to do. I'm going to spend a little bit of time inviting you into a meditation. It's not going to be a long one. We're just going to take a brief a brief exploration of this relationship, of this consideration of this new identity, this way of seeing yourself. And so for those of you that feel safe and comfortable to do so, I would invite you to close your eyes. And if that doesn't feel accessible to you, that's okay. You can leave them open and just have a soft focus. But if you're able and want to, I would invite you to close your eyes and just kind of come into your body for a moment, just briefly, and take a few breaths. And as you breathe, I want to invite you to just bring your focus and your attention up into that part of your brain, right behind your eyes, into that foreground space where that computer is so vigilantly working. I want you to notice, just take a look at that dashboard where the worry light is just blinking. That fear gauge is turned all the way up. Just notice all the things that are happening inside your brain, your body, your energy. Noticing that computer at work, comparing, analyzing, stressing, worrying. And I just want to invite you to notice, turn your attention just over to the left. I want you to notice a knob, rather large knob, pretty heavy duty. And underneath it, it has a label that says analyzer. And I want you to notice, how high is your analyzer turned up right now? And if it feels accessible to you, I want to invite you to just turn the analyzer down 10%. And take a breath. Notice the lights on the dashboard are fading a little bit. Notice the gauges are just kind of losing their power just a little bit. And I want to invite you to maybe turn it down another 10, 15%. And just keep going and see if it feels to you like you could just turn the analyzer all the way down. Maybe even turn it off for a minute. Just turning the analyzer off, or as low as it will let you go. And as you turn it off, just notice everything going silent inside your brain. No alarm bells, nothing to do, nothing to analyze, just breathing. And I want you to notice anything in that space as you focus and bring your attention, becoming very present right there behind the eyes. Just noticing if there are any voices, any protective personalities. If there's anyone else in that room, I just want to invite you to usher them out of the room. Usher them out of the room just for a moment and just emptying that room. And once the room is empty, once the room is quiet, I want you to just breathe for a moment. Notice what it feels like to have the computer unplugged, to have the room empty, and for you to just be there with yourself. I invite you to take another breath. And allowing your body, your mind, everything to relax fully, I want to invite you now to imagine with me. Imagine that you knew at birth that you were a master. Imagine that you knew at the moment of your birth that you were powerful beyond measure. That you possessed enormous gifts. And that all it would take to deliver your gifts to the world was your desire to do so. Imagine for a moment that you came into this world with your heart filled with the healing power of love. And that your only desire was to bestow that love onto all those around you. Imagine that you had the innate ability to create and have all that you want and all that you need. Is it possible that at some point in your life that you knew there was no one else in the world like you? That you were unique and special, that you had a purpose and a desire to manifest in this life that no other soul would ever be able to fulfill. Is it possible that at some point in your life that you knew in every fiber of your being that you not only possessed the light of the world, but that you were the light of the world? Is it possible that at one time you knew who you were at the deepest fucking level? And that you rejoiced in every gift? I'm going to invite you to take a moment now and just see if you can remember that time when you knew the truth of who you really are. As you imagine that truth, that identity, that source, that light, that love, that power, that brilliance, that essence of your being, I want you to just notice, where does it live inside your body? Where does that spark? Where does that life, that fire, that love, where does it live inside your body? Where does it show up? Where do you feel it? And if it feels good to you, I might even invite you to put your hand right there in that place, wherever it is for you. Or at least put your attention there. And as you breathe into that, noticing that it's there, just taking a moment to acknowledge it. Just to say, I see you. I see you. I feel you. I acknowledge you. And I am coming home. I am coming home. I'm coming home. Are you ready? Welcome to come back into the space. And let me know how that was for you. Robin, if you had recorded meditations that I could listen to every day, I would buy all of them. So good. Thank you. We'll do more. We'll do more, Sarah. Any more? All right. That's what I have for each of you today. If you have any questions, comments, that cracked something open. So good. Good. That's what I want to invite you to. That source. That's your home, baby. That's your home. If anyone ain't meeting you there, fucking tell them to kick rocks. That's what I have for you. Okay. Now, my loves, I would like to move on to the next phase of our journey. Letting go of the other people in the room is scary for me. Yeah. They hold the trauma, and if I let them leave, I feel I'll have to feel it and see it. Yeah. Yeah, Grace. That's a really amazing thing to acknowledge, right? And to just meet yourself where you're at. My invitation to you there would be, if it feels too difficult, if it's just scary, but you're able to invite them to leave, I would invite you to explore that. If it feels doable, but if you can't do it, if it's just like a no for you, that's okay, Grace. And you could invite them to just even take a seat, right? And just notice, like, ask them to be quiet for a minute, let them know what you're doing, right? Maybe you could invite some of them to leave. And we can explore that a little bit more, but I just would want to say first that you're not alone. That's very normal, right? And that's part of why doing these meditations and these experiences is so powerful, because it shows us those places that we still have some healing to do, right? And you might even want to ask those parts of you, Grace, what it is that they would be needing, right? And you can explore what part of you is still needing some love there. Okay. And yes, as Kristen said, feel free, if you have any questions or coaching requests, put them in the chat and we can circle back around to this at the end of the day. However, I would like to introduce Jessica to all of you. Like I said, today is all about connection. And one of the things that I love about this conversation and everything that we just talked about with, nurturing that divine connection is, remember how I said in the beginning, one of the things that happens, who felt your nervous system just calm the fuck down just now? Yeah, I'm seeing some hands. Put your hands in the air. Yeah. So one of the benefits of doing this work, right, is that it really calms your nervous system down. And when you do that, you're able to engage in your businesses and your relationships, right? You have clarity, you have perspective. There's so much amazing stuff that happens there. Sometimes, though, it's one of the things is that not only does doing that calm your nervous system down, but sometimes, especially when it comes to cognitive coaching and the work that we do, sometimes it's very difficult to get here when we're triggered. Just like Grace was saying with the trauma, right? There's a lot of things. And so when we're really triggered or really activated, it can be difficult to access parts of ourselves. It can be difficult to claim that sovereignty and that agency and to do that shape shifting and that identity shifting, right? There can be blocks there. And so Jessica will tell you more about what she's getting ready to do, but I love this conversation that she's about to bring to us, because she's going to be talking about expanding your connection through that nervous system regulation. So while nervous system calming is a byproduct of doing that, sometimes learning how to hack your nervous system can help you be able to get there. And so it's a beautiful, beautiful skill set to have. And so I am just so grateful that Jessica agreed to join us. I'm so grateful that she agreed to come teach this. This is her jam, man, getting unblocked, right? I love it. I love it. I love it. And so Jessica's going to talk to you guys a little bit about one of the tools, one of the skill sets to help remove those blocks, to help you be able to do this work and so much more even beyond that. So without further ado, Jessica Smarrow.
Hi, y'all. I feel like right now we all just like melted into home. Is anyone else have that song? Feels like home to me the whole time. Y'all, can we just like have a little dance party? I feel like Robin brought the calm and I'm like talking about nervous system regulation, but I'm gonna like amp everyone up with my ridiculousness. So that's okay. This is gonna be our transition. So first of all, thank you, Robin, for convening this. And of course, just like hat tip to all my fellow presenters and coaches that are part of this. This has been a really fun project to work on. And to all of you new friends, besties, like we're just 20 minutes to best friend status. So I'm so excited to meet all of you. Robin introduced me. I'm Jessica Smarrow. I am a licensed clinical social worker by trade. So I am a licensed therapist by trade turned full-time life coach. And I do general life coaching. I like to coach people on all the things. And that was like a source of drama for me for a minute. And then I just decided it wasn't going to be. Like, I'm just going to be a life coach for all the people. So I help people with a lot of different things. And in my previous life as a clinician, I worked in jail diversion. I did a lot of work helping people stay out of jail or prison, or once they got in, identifying people with mental health and substance use disorders to get them into treatment, keep them out. And so at one point in my life, I was like, I want to revolutionize the prison systems of America. And like, I didn't know what that meant, but I kind of like did that in my jail diversion efforts. But more recently, my jail diversion strategies, my prison revolution is really that of helping people manage the prison, work through the prison of an unmanaged mind. Right. And even what we're talking about today, like the prison of a hijacked nervous system, right? Like getting into those places in our head or in our body where we feel like we don't have control, like we feel locked up by something outside of our control. So today we are going to talk about some nervous system regulation strategies. And I'm going to tell you, like, we're not going to get into the nitty gritty of the autonomic nervous system and polyvagal theory and neuroscience. I mean, I will geek out on all of that, but today I really want to spend time giving you like practical tools that you can apply today to start expanding your connection to yourself. Like, meaning we're talking about a lot of connection, but when it comes to nervous system regulation, I think what that does is it gives you more connection to your full capacity of human emotions, to more access of your thoughts, more access to your creativity that gets hijacked when your nervous system is dysregulated. And I think the goal is there's going to be time for questions and even coaching if I get through all this fast enough. And I talk fast, so you're going to get like double the content in the amount of time. So I do want to start with a brief conversation about why this work is important, specifically to leadership and entrepreneurship. Because when I was thinking about this, I was thinking that developing nervous system regulation skills really is about self-leadership, right? And I was kind of talking about that when it comes to like liberation and breaking free from like the jail cell of our own making, right? And so having a regulated nervous system increases our ability to respond. And I think leadership is all about responsibility, right? And I don't know where I heard this. I'm sure you guys have heard this, probably like Wayne Dyer or Tony Robbins or something, that whole like that responsibility is like response ability, right? Our ability to respond. And when we're dysregulated, we are reactive rather than responsive. And at a physiological level, our autonomic nervous system is literally reacting, right? It's reacting to a perceived threat. And reactivity is a hijacking. Like, we're not consciously deciding how to respond in those moments, which is great when our life is actually threatened. Like, we don't want to be like, I don't know, you think that brand of saber-tooth tiger is really a problem, right? Like, that doesn't serve us well. We want to be able to react. But it's not so great when we're trying to plan a presentation or develop a marketing strategy for our business. right? So, right, everyone's like, right, that doesn't work very well there. So our responsibility or our ability to respond is freedom. It gives us the freedom to access our wise mind, to think clearly, to show up intentionally, to show up on purpose. We don't have to react with that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? The sympathetic nervous system reaction, or react with mental or emotional suffering. When we are in a position to respond, when we have awareness, when we have the ability to identify what is happening and we have access to all of the tools to address it, it's good news, because then our brain comes back online and we have access to the fuller range of our, like I said before, like our creativity, but also ideas and innovation and problem solving skills. Like there's an inverse relationship between emotion mind high and like our logical mind is low. So we're going to get into that today. But something else I want to offer is, as leaders and entrepreneurs, we're constantly taking on challenges, right? Like we're working on the next challenge. People look to us, right? Like if we have a team, people are looking to us. And if you're a solopreneur, like you're looking to yourself to address like these challenges, the challenges of, taking an idea from just that, from an idea to fruition, right? Or to implementation or execution, or to address challenges of things like cash flow and such, right? And it's really hard to take on external challenges when we're challenged internally, right? So creating safety and space and calm internally expands our capacity to take on more external challenges in your business, in your life, in your relationship, and so on. When we have safety in our body, when our nervous system is regulated, we are willing to explore more aspects of life, including business opportunities and risks and such. Right? If keeping yourself calm or at ease or in a state of homeostasis is a challenge, it's nearly impossible to take on other challenges without a great deal of suffering, right? I mean, we can do it, but like we like power through it like we're dragging 18 backpacks along with us. And so I want to like make a comment about suffering. When we don't fear suffering, right? When we don't fear the like uncomfortable emotions, then we're willing to walk full stride. Right? We're willing to go all in, right? Like if you're more willing to jump if you know that you can stand up after a fall, right? I think actually this came up, Robin, when we were recording one of the podcasts, because I use this example. I was like, I'm from Iowa and I used a skiing example. I have no like business, but like, so in Iowa, we're like bunny hills, but it doesn't matter. I went skiing once as a child or like, teen or whatever. And I remember I was terrified. Like I didn't want to go until the instructor taught me how to stop. Right. And when I knew how to stop, when I knew I wasn't going to be like skis overhead, right? Like when I knew that I could stop, then I was willing to go. And this is the same thing when it comes to our nervous system and our emotions. When we know we have the ability and capability and capacity to handle that, then we're willing to go all in, take risks and try things, right? And so also when we acknowledge that like uncomfortable emotions are part of the human experience and we trust that we can handle them. When we know how to feel a feeling, when we know how to regulate our nervous system, then we know we don't have to suffer with all the what ifs. Like, you can just handle whatever is coming your way. And I'm saying this like matter of fact, like, oh, we could just handle all of it. Like this is a whole skill set, y'all. This is why many of us have jobs as coaches, right? Because this takes practice. This is a skill to be developed, right? So you have some option, like you can allow an emotion and feel it all the way through and move on. Or you can utilize some of the nervous system regulation tools that we're going to discuss today. And this is where I think it's worth bringing in neuroplasticity for a moment, just a brief conversation. Because when you're willing to feel your feelings and when you're equipped with the skills to regulate your nervous system, you're actually like rewiring your brain to understand that a feeling or a sensation in your body is not an emergency. It's not a problem. Like it's not something to avoid. It can be allowed to come and go. Like when your brain starts to trust that your body can handle the physical sensations of an emotion, then it learns that it's not an actual emergency, right? Like part of the thing that like initiates that fight, flight, freeze is your brain's like, oh, we're feeling anxious. We're like panic, right? Go into fight, flight, freeze. We're going to like retraining your brain to trust your body can handle the vibration of an emotion. And then your brain gets freed up to focus on the things that are actually an emergency. Like somebody cuts you off in traffic. You need that hijacked nervous system response of reactivity. Okay. So doing this work allows you to connect to the depths and dimensions of life. and yourself and business. Okay. And so before I get into the specific techniques, here's like my warning label, get your attention, that as leaders, as entrepreneurs, it's very tempting to focus on all of the things that need to be fixed, like all the stuff, quote unquote, out there, all the quote unquote real problems, like marketing, getting clients, making payroll, dealing with personnel. And we can overlook the power of things like I'm going to talk about today, the power of these nervous system regulation skills, because they seem really simple, like almost elementary in like the activities that we're doing. But when we do it, we have access to so much more of ourselves, of our potential, our success, of our business ideas, of risk tolerance, of success tolerance, of our problem solving skills. Right? We literally are expanding ourselves here. And I think I want to share a quick example that I think really illustrates the difference between having access to all of ourselves and being in a hijacked nervous system state. And this is a story I heard from Shirzad Chamine. If anyone's familiar with positive intelligence, I'm going to talk more about him in a moment. But he shared a story about a researcher was conducting a study with two different groups. And he didn't use this language, but I'm going to use the language of like regulated nervous system and not regulated. But basically there were these two groups, and one group was in that sort of like hijacked survival part of the brain. And the other group was in more of that calm, relaxed, having access to higher thinking. And they were given a newspaper, and they were told that whoever got the number of images in the newspaper the fastest would win a prize. And so group one, that group that was in sort of the hijacked survival part of their brain, took on average 2 minutes to count the images up. The group that had the calm nervous system got the answer in 10 seconds. And here's why. Because on page 2 of the newspaper, in 2-inch letters, it said, stop counting, there are 43 images, right? But when our nervous system is dysregulated, we literally have tunnel vision, like we have foveal vision, and we miss the context. But in a regulated nervous system state or regulated state, we're able to take more in and access peripheral vision, like literally and figuratively, we're able to take more in. Yeah. Okay. So today I'm going to share some tools based on the work of Shirzad Chamine, which I was just talking about with positive intelligence, and the work of renowned hypnotherapy teacher, Melissa Tiers. And I think some people in here maybe are even familiar with her work. Oh, thank you. We're sharing stuff in the chat. So good. Okay. I'll pause for a second, see if there's any questions. Thank you guys for sharing all those resources. Okay. So I'm going to start with the self-command tools that are a part of the positive intelligence that I mentioned, founded by Shirzad Chamine. So here's the thing. In an ideal world, we would all be avid meditators, right? And our nervous systems would be highly regulated. We'd have so much capacity and access to our nervous system. However, the stats are egregious on this. Like a lot of people aspire to be meditators, and it's something like 90% intend to do it and don't. Right. And y'all get that, like, even me, like I meditate, like I'm a little bit of a yogi meditator, but like, even, I don't know how long Robin did that, but I was like, I don't know, part of it might be like, oh, as I'm about to present, and maybe there was just some noise from that, but I was like, oh, it's like hard to sit still. Right. So some of these tools that I'm going to talk about are just, they give you some of the benefits of the meditation qualities without having to sit on your meditation pillow for extended periods of time, although that certainly helps. Okay, I want to think of the analogy of like a cell phone battery. So a great way to think about this is starting your day with your self-command muscle fully charged. And so a great way to do this is starting out your day in one of your 5 senses. And like in the ideal version, I hesitate to even like say what I'm about to say, because we will get extreme about it and get all or nothing perfectionist about it, but we're not going to do that because y'all are here for a reason. We're getting out of all of our perfectionist tendencies. But the ideal way to meet that full charge battery of your self-command muscle is 12 minutes in one of your 5 senses. But I will say 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, any time that you spend is going to charge up that battery of being able to shift between your hijacked state and your unhijacked state. Okay. So in an ideal world, you start in one of your 5 senses. Okay. And this can be I mean, it can be so many things. Like you could use even apps for it, like the Insight Timer is a meditation app that's free and they have, resources for this, but also keeping it super simple and accessible for yourself. So maybe it's like 1 minute, bringing your awareness to one of your five senses, which might be visual, right? You might label, like there's a white wall, black ceiling fan, black clock on the wall, bird chirping, right? You might even like label noises that you hear. Right? You can bring awareness to your tactile senses. Feel the sensation of your feet on the ground. Or when you wake up in the morning, maybe it's feeling the sensation of the crisp sheets underneath you, the temperature and texture of that. Also, the temperature and texture of your breath, right? Like on an inhale, noticing the difference between an inhale and an exhale. Okay. So again, if it feels like too much for you to even do 1 minute of sitting still with that, not a problem, because this is also these things that I'm talking about here, getting in one of your five senses is something, even if you spend 10 seconds, according to his research, according to the positive intelligence literature, that even 10 seconds in one of your five senses is enough to help with some regulation. Right. And so this is something, again, if you're doing it sort of ideally, you charge up your battery in the morning, you get your 2, 5, 12 minutes in, your battery's up, and then like episodically throughout the day, you're tuning into one of your five senses to sort of keep that battery charge up. Okay. And what I love to do with this is I like to teach people to like use anchor activities to do this. So if you like you're going to get up and you're going to go fill out your water bottle. Right. This is a great way you can be like, okay, I can feel the smoothness of my water bottle. I can feel the metal and the coolness, the temperature of the ice, the sound of the water pouring from the pitcher into the bottle. Right. Or like we all go to the bathroom throughout the day, or I assume y'all do. Right. And that's a great way, unless you're superhuman and or robotic, I don't know. So, but the way I like to do it is like when I'm going to go to the bathroom, I'm like, okay, I can feel my feet on the ground, like heel toe, right? I can feel the knob when I open the door, or the temperature of the water, the texture of the soap. And what I love about these strategies is that I think, one of the, maybe not the most frequent, but a very frequent thought error I hear from entrepreneurs is I don't have time. Right. So when we talk about things like this that are like good for ourselves, we're like, our first excuse is going to be, I don't have time. But layering it in like this makes these regulation skills accessible. Like you don't take any more time. You're going to be walking to the bathroom anyway. Why not give yourself the gift of building up that self-command muscle? Okay. And here's the other thing. You can also use these techniques in response, right? Like in the moment, like when you notice anxiety or mental spinning, again, get into one of your five senses for 10 seconds. And I like to make these super accessible, like things you can do even in a meeting, like rubbing your fingertips together with the attention that like you can actually feel like the ridges of your fingerprint, right? Or like take, like the tip of your finger to your palm. These are things nobody has to know. You're like trying to calm yourself down. This can be done, right? Or again, like sitting in a meeting, you can listen for like five things you can hear, five things you can see or smell, right? And so again, in an ideal world, you charge your battery up in the morning, do this throughout the day, and both you can also use it when your nervous system gets hijacked and you need also like even just like PRN, I think about it. Like if you're like going in to do a presentation or you're going into a meeting or you have to pull in a partner that you feel like we're about to have a difficult conversation, spending a few seconds, 10 seconds, even 30 seconds in one of your five senses can help you get into a state where you have just access to more of you. Okay. Let's see, now that you're talking, I can see I do this, but I didn't associate it with regular. Right. Yeah. Have a bracelet that I can fiddle with. Right. We do that. Like we do this all the time, like fidget toys, right? Or people like even bouncing their knee, right? Like some of those things that look like anxious, it's like another form of regulation, right? It's bringing attention to their physical body. Okay. So those are the tools I wanted to share with you from the positive intelligence side of things. Hold on. All I thought was I about lost my shit. I couldn't get my gas tank. I love it, Kristen. Yes. Going into one of your five senses for 10 seconds helped I love that. Like that was an example of like was enough to just get you out of panic so that you could actually problem solve the situation. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears from positive intelligence to the work of Melissa Tiers. Again, I mentioned she's a renowned hypnotherapist, and I think I saw that Kristen put something in the chat about her because Melissa's brilliant. Go follow her work. And so take a moment and think about something that triggers anxiety or dysregulation, right? And maybe if you're an entrepreneur, you're a leader, so maybe something specific to your business, like public speaking or talking to your board, doing a social media reel, looking at your books, right? When you have to do your monthly or quarterly, looking at your numbers, sitting down to map out your 3 essentials for Q3 of your business, right? Thinking about your X, right? Whatever gets you hijacked. The tools I'm going to share here are ones that can interrupt and downregulate. Okay, so I'm going to teach you, I think I'm going to teach about 4, kind of depending. I don't know, Robin, you can let me know on time. I don't know what's my scheduled ending time for this portion. Yeah, I just quizzed everyone on the spot. Where are we at? It's fine. You figure it out. I'm going to keep teaching. Okay,
You're good.
So the first one I want to teach is bilateral stimulation. And fun fact, I brought this ball in so I could show you guys, and my dog, I couldn't find it. My dog totally thought this was his. So he's going to be really mad at me while he watches me play with this ball and he's not involved. So bilateral stimulation is what, like, you can use anything. If you have a ball, you have a stress ball, you have like your, ceiling fan remote, your AirPods case, yeah, anything, whatever, that a USB. And honestly, if you have nothing, that's fine too. You can still do this. So you want to find like the midline of your body, okay? And you want to hold your object here. You want to hold your object at the midline of the body, and you're going to pass it back and forth, and you're going to kind of keep your elbows in and let your hands swing out, right? And like to help to make this even better, it's like if you can like pass the object right around that midline point, apparently that helps this. Okay, and the reason why this works is because emotions like anxiety happen in one hemisphere of your brain. And right now, we're activating both hemispheres. And as Melissa would say, anxiety just can't keep its shit together, right? You're like, literally, it's like undoing, right? And I love teaching this to clients because like I get so calm and relaxed when I do that, right? So bilateral stimulation, you can do this for like 1 minute, and you don't have to like take my word for it. Like check in with yourself, right? See how emotionally intense or hijacked you are. Do this for a few minutes and notice the difference. Let your body be the barometer. Let your body give you data. So that's one, bilateral stimulation. And then the other one I want to teach you, how many of you are familiar with EFT or emotional freedom techniques? Tapping, yeah? So this is a version of, Melissa calls it faster EFT, right? And what I really like about this, especially if you're like on the go and you want to use it just anywhere, like you can pop into a public restroom and do this, like it's you don't have to know like all of the setup, statements and all the scripts and stuff for EFT. This is a shortened version of it, and it's still very effective. So I'm going to walk you through the points. So you're going to do this with me. Also, I will say you can use whatever words you want to say. If you want something that's just like in your backpack ready to go, I release and let this go. Right? Just the words, I release and let this go. Right? So we're going to start and tap on the top of your head. And you can say or think, I release and let this go. And again, and you can like play around with this, like notice like if you're tapping really fast, notice how that feels. And then like if you slow it down, notice if that feels any different to you. There's no right or wrong way. Just checking in with you. And then in between the eyebrows, and using 3 fingers allows you to kind of hit that third eye plus like the inside of your eyebrows of each eyebrow. And that hits those acupressure points. I release and let this go. And then side of the eye, like by your temple, there's a bone right there. I release and let this go. And then under the eye, on that bone right there, I release and let this go. Your chest, there's your collarbone right there. I release and let this go. And then grab your wrist, take an inhale, exhale twice as long, Exhaling twice as long is something that can always activate your parasympathetic, which will downregulate your nervous system. Right? So, and you can do that as many times as you want. You can repeat it. You can use both hands if you want. Some people, like, there's no right or wrong. You just want to check in and see what feels good for you. And I love to encourage people to, like, again, rate the emotion before doing it so you can see, like, oh, what's the difference now? I do it one time and I went from an 8 to a 3, like, feels good. Okay. And so those are both ones where, like, I don't know, you might not want to do bilateral stimulation or tapping in the middle of the meeting, but the next one I'm going to give you is, like, this is when you can do in front of other people and they're not even going to know about it. And that is peripheral vision, right? And we talked earlier, the example I used with the newspaper was, like, this is when our nervous system is dysregulated, we are in foveal vision, tunnel vision. So this is an exercise to actually get us engaged into peripheral vision, which will engage your parasympathetic or downregulating part of your nervous system. So I'll invite you to practice this with me, but look at something that's not me, because I'm, like, moving and that might not work for you. So if you can go find a focal point that's not me and soften your gaze. And without moving your eyes or your head, you're just going to expand your awareness, keeping your eye focused softly on the whatever you're looking at in front of you, the focal point, and just notice what happens when you bring your awareness out. Give, like, concentric circles. Maybe you bring it out to, like, the 3 and 9 o'clock on, if you had a clock, thinking about bringing your awareness out there. And then feel what happens when you bring the awareness to even, like, behind you, keeping your eyes on the focal point. Maybe you even bring awareness to the rooms adjacent to where you are, or your neighbor's house. So this is one you can do if somebody's watching you. Also, this is a really useful one if you're struggling to sleep at night, right? You get into that mental spinning and you can't stop ruminating. It's not super activating, so you can stay in bed, concentric circles of peripheral vision. Okay. And the next one I want to talk about is it's called the backward spin, but really it's like this spin can go any direction you want, right? So here's what I want to invite you to do. Play along with me. And let's just do anxiety, but you could use this for any emotion. But show me with your hand, like, when you feel anxiety in your body, what that motion looks like. Like, if anxiety was emotion, oh yeah, like she's doing it's like this, right? Oh, we got all that. Okay, yes. All right. So I'm going to do, you guys keep doing yours, like this anxiety. So I'm going to invite you to, like, move it out from you, like move it like 12 inches out. Yeah. And just notice that. And, like, whatever speed you're going, go half speed. Wow. Yeah. And then whatever direction you're doing it, now go the opposite direction. Right? You're like, what? You feel your brain like, right? Yeah. Yeah. And now keeping doing like that, going the opposite direction you're going at that slowed down speed, you can bring it back to your body and notice how that feels different. And if you really want to, like, get some disruption to the anxiety going, laugh. Ha 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 ha. Like, yeah, see, like, it's just it's gonna get some dissociation going to that emotion that was there, right? And the thing I love about these last 4 techniques that I was just teaching you is that they're like multi-purpose. From a neuroplasticity level, they're pattern interrupters, right? So when you think of, I like to think of, like, habituated responses like self-doubt, anxiety, uncertainty, avoidance, procrastination, like these things that interfere with your leadership and entrepreneurial qualities. I like to see those as habituated patterns and not personal descriptors, right? Like, they're not adjectives. It's just a habituated pathway in your brain, because then it's just science. It's just an habituated pattern to change. And so when you use those last 4 techniques, especially that I just talked about, that interrupts the habituated pattern and it's down regulating your nervous system at the same time. So 1, it's calming. And then 2, it also gives you access to your high level thinking. Okay. Yes, thank you, Kristen. In the chat there's a whole lot of information there about like where you can get more about the anti-anxiety toolkit that she listed there has the 4 that I just covered, plus a whole bunch more. So if you want more on that, that's available there. So I'm going to pause there and see how we're doing on time and see if there are any questions or coaching requests. And I don't know if we're holding coaching requests all the way till the end, Robin. So
I told everyone we could hold them till the end. If they have coaching
Okay.
requests or things they want, just put them in the chat and we can circle back in case you run out of time right now.
Okay. Yes. All right. Okay. Any questions, comments? Turn it over.
You all set then, Jessica?
Yeah, I think so. I don't see anything. I don't see any questions. Yeah, we're good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. That was wonderful. I love that, Jessica. Thank you so much. I love Melissa Tears. I love all of those techniques that you shared of hers. I especially love the spinning one. That's one of my favorites. What about anyone else? Does anyone else have any favorites? Like what are your go-tos? That spinning technique is one of my favorites. I also really like the bilateral stimulation. It's just so easy and like soothing. Sarah liked the 5 senses. Yeah. So good, Jessica. Amazing. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful. I love that. So helpful. I love the hacks because you're right. Not everyone can do like the meditations for such a long time. It can be like, especially if you're not, if you're new to it, or I think for people that have, whatever, ADD or PTSD, like the closing the eyes can be really hard. So it's so nice to have that variety of options. I love it.
There is one question. Can I just take a second, Robin, to answer the question about like how to regulate when the environment is the cause of the anxiety?
Yes, please go.
And yeah, and that's like a big question, I think, for like a mindset coach. We're like, right, like there's so much opportunity, but so I won't go down a rabbit hole too much, but here's what I will say about that is like, this is where there's the opportunity for the both and. Right. Like, and this is where like this is a great place to apply what I was just talking about with when we take a moment to regulate our nervous system, then our higher level thinking is back online. So if you take some time to do something that is immediately in your control, which is to down regulate your nervous system, right? Practicing one of these techniques, then your ability to problem solve and think about what do I want to do about the environmental factors that are currently in front of me. Right? Like, do I want to change them? How do I want to change them? How do I want to problem solve them? You're going to have much more access to that when you are in a regulated state. So like, it's like 2 parts. It's going directly to what is in your control. Because when it comes to your environment, there are going to be times when you can change your environment immediately. I can get up and leave. There are going to be times you can't change your environment immediately, but you always have in your control your ability to tap into some of those techniques that I just mentioned that will help regulate your nervous system, which again has the compound benefit of giving you access to more creativity, problem-solving skills to decide what you want to do about the environmental factors that are contributing to the anxiety.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, Jessica. Thank you. And it makes me think about because sometimes, and that's a beautiful question, like, what do you do when the environment is the problem? Like you're at work and you're feeling triggered because you're thinking like, oh, these people don't like me. I don't fit in. I don't belong, depending on whatever it is. So there's that, the thought work stuff, which we can leave out of it for right now, obviously, but it's like, but just noticing that when you're feeling that way, like, I wonder, do you obviously like with the tapping, that's, I don't know if you would call that like an affirmation, like, right? Like I release and let this go. But like, do you, Jessica, include other types of like thought, even, I mean, things like that when you do even the bilateral stimulation or any of that, or even just the breathing, like when you're trying to calm yourself, when that you're feeling a little bit triggered by something. Is there anything, go ahead.
Yeah, what I would say about that is like, especially when it comes to nervous system dysregulation, like I think about that's like one of those places where thought work isn't necessarily readily available in those times, right? Because again, your brain is literally offline. You're like,
Exactly.
like everything has gone to your body. So like, if it really is a place where you're like, my nervous system is hijacked, like really doing something to get in your body is helpful. And depending on like where you're at with your work, like for me, now I'm at this point where I was like, if I could just like close my eyes and come home to my body, which I love the language you use, right? Like coming home, like to our resourced self that is always there. Like honestly, like that, at least in the beginning for me, that's enough. Like the importance is to kind of turn off the brain for a moment. So I don't go directly to a thought work activity in that moment. Like if you're feeling like really dysregulated, going into one of your five senses, doing the bilateral, doing the tapping, you can do that even honestly with or without words. That's why I just like the go-to, I release and let this go.
Yeah.
But
I
no,
guess that's what I was
just,
wondering is, do you
yeah.
think of that, like when you say I release and let this go, like, do you think of that as similar to like an affirmation, or like if somebody was, I don't think it's the same as like thought work necessarily, because with thought work, we're like, what's the unintentional thought? And then what's the new thought? But I guess I was just curious if you would recommend incorporating that idea like you did with the tapping with any other things, or not as much, just letting it be.
No, I do if it's available, like when I'm doing it with a client and I'm walking them through like a tapping, and I might be like, even though I think nobody's ever going to love me, I can never find a partner, I know that I always have me, right? Like, and it might just, I don't even know, it's like whatever comes up, and like 9 times out of 10, there's gonna be like something that I say in that, or like even something that like people do for themselves that they're like, oh, that hit something. That hit a tender, right? So like it could be that there might be some words available. I just would say don't make it a problem if there's not. If your brain is like, I am offline and the body work is enough. And if there's some language that feels available and true, again, your body will tell you, because you'll feel that. You'll feel it.
I love it. I agree 100%. And I feel the same way. Like sometimes just coming home to myself and my body feels like enough. It's amazing. And I think it's like sometimes it's the thing that we miss when we're doing all the other stuff. So thank you for offering that, Jessica, today. I appreciate you. Okay. So next up we have Dr. Laura Jurgens, who is here and waiting in the wings. Hello, Laura, welcome in. I will let Laura introduce herself and her topic. I know she's getting ready to dive into talking a bit, again, more about this conversation around nurturing connection and embodiment stuff. What a beautiful day. All this is complementing each other so well. So Laura, go ahead and take it away. And you can let people know, I'll give you the reins to let people know what you're about to teach them.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. So thanks for the introduction, Robin. And this was a great segue, I think, from Jessica too, since we're going to talk a lot about embodiment. And we're actually going to talk about embodiment and sensuality and how we compartmentalize ourselves away from our sensual selves, away from our erotic selves, and what that sort of costs us and how to avoid it and what we can do without, and sort of like how we think about things. And sometimes we think that we get kind of scared of sensuality as it relates to everything else in our life, except for sort of these very specific moments when we're like about to have sex with our partner. And that is completely understandable given the culture around sex and sensuality. And so we want to unpack a little bit of that today. And it may seem like this has nothing to do with leadership, but I think you'll see how it does. And I'm hoping to get everybody's feedback. And so it may feel a little risky at first, but I think we'll discover some fun stuff. That said, I'm going to introduce myself, but I first want to just give us a chance to like shake it off, because I know we've been focusing, we've been thinking, we've been listening, and maybe it's time to stand up. And if standing is something that you feel capable of doing right now and is something that is accessible to you, I want to invite you to just stand up for a minute and like give yourself a wiggle, have your own little dance party, whatever feels good. Do whatever feels good to your body to get some blood flow. Make sure those not all sitting in our legs from sitting around for a while. Take your time, do whatever you need to do. And whenever you're ready, take your time, stretch, feel into what's here for you after all those lovely exercises that Jessica went through. And hopefully we can kind of come back together with a little bit of more full body blood flow going on. So, oh, that was good for me. I hope it was good for you too. So just a little bit about me, so you know who the heck I am talking with you today. I am a sex, relationship, and embodiment coach, and my mission is to help people have amazing sex and erotic lives, really fulfilling resentment-free relationships, and to help people connect fully with their bodies and release the shame that many of us hold, shame and judgment around our bodies. So that is just like a really joyful mission for me. I have, I'll put my website in the chat too, if you want to find me at any time. But my training and background is actually really different than that. I was a science professor for many years. Before that, I was all kinds of things. I worked in nonprofit, I did community organizing. So I've been a leader in all kinds of different flavors. And I had a pretty rocky start in life. I had severe abuse at home. I had a lot of sexual trauma. Then I was homeless as a child and on my own by 15. And I basically raised myself, and I had severe PTSD that was undiagnosed for a really long time. So for me, actually, my journey through coaching was around really struggling with my mental health and my emotional wellness, having really struck out with a lot of therapists for a long time and gotten kind of that like brick wall therapy where you talk and they say absolutely nothing and then you just leave with your own trauma feeling awful. So that happened for many years. And then, I was on antidepressants for a long time, and I was putting myself through graduate school and like trying to finish my PhD, and was like, none of this is working. I am losing my mind. Because I was just so intensely stressed out and I was trying to achieve my way into worthiness. So my coaching journey started then when I discovered some great coaches in the world and started listening to their podcasts, and then finding out about more cognitive-based coaching. So I did general life coaching for a while I was a professor also. And then really for me, sensuality, sexuality was like the last frontier of me finding myself and reclaiming my body, reclaiming things that had been really my birthright, things that had been taken from me. So that's something that I help people with all the time, reclaiming pleasure at any stage of life, like all that kind of jazz. And how the heck does it relate to leadership? So one of the, and like business. So that's kind of like my brief story, but problems you might have that relate to not being fully embodied and being cut off and sort of compartmentalized from our full bodies, which include our genitals and our sexual selves. Problems that I used to have too were like being in my head all day and having trouble turning it off. If anybody has any of these, put them in the chat. Or if you have your own flavor. I also got really stuck in like productivity efficiency mode. And I would come home and be trying to like problem solve in my relationships. So instead of actually listening and empathizing, I would be trying to fix things for people. I also had a lot of like body pain and things I would do, like I would be hunched over my computer for hours and not realize until I went to stand up and my back was, thrashed, or I would barely notice what I was eating. I wouldn't stop to pee because I had to finish an email. So those kind of things, like just not listening to my animal self. Maybe you've had that. I found it really hard to take a break. When people would say taking a break, I was like, well, what do you do? I have things to do. If I take a break, how do I access relaxation? So I had a hard time, like at the end of the day, accessing relaxation. I would come home, everything was going in my head. And the only way I figured out how to calm all the voices in my head was like drinking like a half a bottle of wine and watching a lot of Netflix. Which was just like no bueno, right? Like that did not do great things for me and my body. yes, somebody else has to make themselves go pee. Somebody, like a couple people are totally in their head, feeling bad about yourself or not good enough. And feel some like people have really great connections with their body, but then like sex itself is like not feeling great. And we think it should feel better, or everybody else is having this like porn star experience and it's all supposed to look like that, right? And we somehow think if we spend all day in our heads, we can go home, switch it off like a light switch, and turn on the turn on and jump into bed with our lovers and have this like intense connection. And I can tell you that that is a total fucking fairy tale. And if you practice all day being disconnected, like being waist up all day, it is really, really almost impossible to completely shift that. You can pretend that you are, and you can be performative in doing it, but it's very hard to actually shift. So this is one of the reasons why we have incredibly high rates of divorce for entrepreneurs. We have not only is the relational aspect really challenging when we're in this like productivity gotta go mode, but our lovers, our sex lives, and our connections with all the people in our lives who are not at work suffer. But I want to also often offer that like actually our connections with other humans even at work suffer when we're not fully embodied. And when we start talking about sensuality in the same sentence as we talk about work, we start getting a little nervous for very good reasons, because we have a culture of very oppressive sexuality. So we, many of us have been over like hypersexualized, objectified, and sort of like sexualized without our consent for much of our lives. We also have a culture that really shames sexuality, but then expects a lot of us to be able to just sort of turn it on and to sort of perform for other people. We have an expectation that we have this like romantic fairy tale in our culture where we're told that we will get, if we sort of exchange our pleasure for somebody else, we'll get this like protection and love and somebody to take care of us and somebody to be there for us forever. And that fairy tale is really harmful for a lot of people because it creates a lot of expectations that's just not great. But we have a culture where people are both repressed around sexuality and then oppressed by sexuality. I want to just offer that what we're talking about today, what I'm talking about, which is claiming your whole body, claiming your whole self, including your genitals, including your sexual energy, your erotic energy, your experience of sensation on your skin, none of that is intended to be at someone. It's for us. It's for us. And I can tell you as a woman in academia, I felt very strongly like I wasn't allowed to be my full self walking across campus. It wasn't safe, right? I wasn't allowed to be my full adult woman self with a sexual being in the classroom. And it wasn't because like I was ever gonna like sexualize anybody. It wasn't towards somebody, it wasn't for somebody else, but I just didn't feel like I had access to it for myself. I didn't have access to that energy because it didn't feel safe and it didn't feel accepted. I didn't feel like I could just dress how I wanted. Like I wasn't wearing my crazy snake earrings, right? Which I happen to find really sexy and for me, right? But like just little examples like that where we compartmentalize ourselves and we don't notice that actually it's okay to be a full human being. It's okay to have access to all of our chakras, right? All of our bodies. So I just want to offer that what I'm talking about is not sexuality at people. It's the experience of full embodiment for you. Has anybody got questions about that before we move on to any exercises? Because I know it's a little bit of like might break the brain a little bit in a good way. Great. Thanks, Robin. Okay. Okay. So enjoying your full body, decompartmentalizing yourself, one of the benefits is it allows you to really get in touch with being a heart-driven leader. Whatever type of leadership you're doing, whether it's in your family, in your work life, in your community, if we want to be heart-driven and authentic, that means we have to be in touch with our heart and with our gut, right? So we can't run over them all day, be up in our head, be sort of like living in what I call the attic. So if you think of your whole body as a house, a lot of times we spend the whole day living in the attic. And so some of the exercises Jessica just gave us are like little ways to get into the body and allow the body wisdom to regulate us. But one of the places we often forget to go is actually into our pelvis. So we have a whole part of our body that we sometimes forget to tap into. And there's actually a lot of creative energy that tends to be stored in the pelvis. Maybe that's a little woo for some people, but if you think about it just in terms of scientifically, in terms of where you're holding tension, a lot of us are actually holding a lot of tension in our pelvis. And that's keeping that micro tension in your body is actually keeping some of the energy, which is, we know that energy is real, right? So that's actually like, we can scientifically understand this as that's holding energy back from moving through your body. So connecting authentically with yourself, self-attunement, feeling like safe and trustworthy to others, a lot of that will come if you are opening up your relationship with your pelvis. It also means that you'll have more access to pleasure, true pleasure, which can help you avoid some of the sort of like numbing pleasures and help you get into more relaxation. So I want to offer an exercise today that is actually just like such a perfect, so perfect that Jessica did some of the activation scale, the sort of trigger scale type of work, because we're going to use that too. And I want to offer an exercise that helps you connect to your pelvis. So what we're going to do is start by, everybody's ready to go. And this is all invitation based. So you don't have to do anything. You can do it all at your own pace. And I'm just going to invite you to come along on this exploratory journey with me. If at any point anything feels like uncomfortable or unsafe, check in with yourself and see if you can remember that you are safe in this moment. You are alive and you are therefore safe. And there is absolutely nothing in your own body to fear. But if it does feel safe, like feel free to step back and do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. Because there can be some stored grief. So just be aware that if you don't typically connect regularly with your pelvis, there may be some stored emotions there, and that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with them coming out. It's actually really great. So if, for example, the first time I did this exercise, I was like mysteriously crying. One time I did it, I was like cracking up. It's most of the time it's just really calming, but just let anything be here. So the first thing we're going to do is just check your level of activation. So 0 being completely calm, total calmness, and 10 being, I am like having a horrible fight, flight, panic attack at this moment. So see where you are in that 0 to 10 and just notice that for yourself. You don't have to have the right answer. You can be a 4.5, whatever. Don't worry about it. Just check in and see where you're at. And then what I'm going to invite you to do is close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you. You don't have to. And we're going to walk from the attic in the head. We're going to walk downstairs into the body. And just allow yourself to imagine gently closing the door on the attic. You can leave a little gap So you can send any of the sort of thoughts and stuff that come up. You can just send them upstairs back to the attic. But you're going to let your awareness really drop down into the body, walk down those stairs into the whole rest of the house. And we're going to just allow any sensations or emotions to be here. If there's pain, if there's numbness, if there's jitteriness, if there's any emotional sensations, just sort of notice them as sensations in the body and allow them to be here. They're just what's happening in the temperature of your house right now. In a certain room, right? There's a light. That might be a little bit of numbness in a foot, for example. So just noticing those things, allowing them to be here. And then we're going to start focusing on our breath. And just breathing through our nose really naturally and filling up the chest. Just allow yourself to fill your chest up fully. And then release through your mouth. Breathing through the nose, filling up the chest. Just releasing through a softening jaw. Let your jaw soften as you exhale. You might find it feels nice to make a little sound like a sigh or a moan. We want to welcome all of that. And just allowing yourself to fill up your chest like a balloon and then release it through your mouth. And on the next inhale, I want to invite you to bring that breath down to your belly. So we're going to fill up our belly this time like a balloon and just let it release all the way on the exhale. Bringing the awareness of the breath, the feeling and sensation of the breath, pulling it all the way down into this belly that's filling up and releasing it. Just noticing that there's some energy that comes on your inhale and circles through your belly, comes back through your chest, and is released on your exhale. And we're going to take a couple more breaths here at your own pace. Filling up your belly and releasing it all the way. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Just noticing what's happening for you in your belly with any sensations. There's maybe warmth. There could be changes in your sensations. And just allowing all of that. So the next place we're going to move this breath is we're going to take it all the way down to the pelvis. So when you breathe in through your nose, imagine bringing it past your chest, past your belly, all the way down into your pelvic floor, into your seat. And pulling that breath all the way down to your pelvis and then releasing it completely all the way back up the column of your torso, out your mouth. Starting to allow yourself to feel sensation in your pelvis. You might take a little squeeze of your pelvic floor, a little pelvic contraction at the top of your breath. So when you breathe in, you actually squeeze your pelvic muscles. You're trying to stop a pee a little bit and then release them on the exhale. Just allowing that breath to be pulled all the way down your torso, filling up your pelvis, squeezing a little bit at the top, and then releasing all of that tension with your exhale. And as you do this, just notice if there's any more awareness or any more sensation, any heat, any tingling. All of that is okay. And it's also okay if none of it's present for you. Just letting there be a circuit of breath down into your pelvis, little contraction, and a full release of all the tension that you can release with your exhale. So what we're going to do next is just allow ourselves to be present with whatever sensations are there for us in our seat, in our pelvis. And we're going to slowly, at your own pace, just allow yourself to keep that awareness when you come back into the room, when you come back with everyone. And allow yourself to just gently open your eyes, come back to present in this space, and notice that you can stay connected with your pelvis, with your whole body, and with whatever energy is there. And it's okay if you kind of come in and out of awareness a little bit, but see if you can just hold a thread of connection with your seat, with your pelvic floor. As we come back together, and see if you notice how your energy is now. So check in with yourself on that activation scale. 0 is extremely calm, like totally calm, maybe energized, but really relaxed in it. And 10 is like in the middle of having an actual panic attack or like a fight, flight, freeze episode. So see if your number has changed at all from the beginning to the end. Has anybody had their numbers change a little bit? You can put it in the chat if you want. And anybody notice a little bit more connection or a little more awareness of full body sensation? Yeah, a little more openness. Yeah, a little bit more awareness. So this is a really great exercise to do, especially if it was hard for you, because what it will do is help you connect your nerves from your actual nerves from your pelvis to your brain. So what happens, we don't necessarily spend a lot of time actually feeling into our pelvis. And we not only don't notice the tension that we hold there, but we don't actually have the highway connected as well between the nerves in our pelvis and our brain's receptors. And so one of the things that we can do when we bring more awareness is we can actually start learning to relax our pelvic muscles a little more, relax the tension, and also increase our capacity for overall body pleasure by not having a big block in the middle of our torso, right? It also will help. It is an extra benefit is that it does help you actually feel a little more energized oftentimes when you have connection with your pelvis, and more pleasure when you do fun things with your pelvis later. So those are some of the extra benefits. Does anybody want to say anything about that experience or have any questions or thoughts about it before we move on? I know this is kind of vulnerable, and so for a lot of people, this is a like vulnerable part of the body, and I just want to say that's okay. There's nothing wrong if this feels difficult or vulnerable for you, or if there's emotions that come up when you do it. So I am going to open up. So if you're not ready with questions and you think you might have more later, don't worry about it. You'll have more opportunity. You can also always contact me with questions directly. Feel free to email me if you have questions. So I want to offer too that one of the best ways to stay connected to your body and energized is through touch. Okay, Tammy is asking to talk about how this connects us in our everyday life when not being sexual. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll finish the touch thought in a second and answer Tammy's question first. So one of the things that we know from a lot of long-standing lineages, non-Western, sort of more Eastern lineages, like Taoism and Tantra and things like that, are that a lot of our creative energy as humans is held in the pelvis. That's where our root chakra is. We're looking at the creative life force type of energy in our bodies is a lot of it is actually held in the pelvis. That's where, we have this bowl. Our pelvis is basically a bowl that holds our torso up. And if you can imagine what happens when we are disconnected from this big middle part of our body is we actually lose a lot of a grounding in ourselves. And we have, when we unlock that, we have access to more energy and more creativity. So that's, again, as a scientist, I say this, I realize that it's a little woo for people, but there's a lot of strong evidence of this over thousands of years. And also we can just think about it as in terms of like your energy, right? We know that humans have energy because you get tired, right? So you have energy, and it makes sense that if like the whole center of your torso is like clenching and tense, and that you have some blockage in your energy. So think about it that way. It will energize the rest of your life. And typically sexual energy, erotic life force energy, that's all erotic energy is just life force energy, right? That's it. We can see it in all of the other creatures on the planet, and us. We have life force energy that is oftentimes just extra heightened during like a sexual interaction, but that energy is just our regular life force energy. So think about the more you're unlocking that, and the more you're unlocking the parts of your body that hold a lot of it and hold a lot of sensation and pleasure in your life, you're going to have access to more relaxation because you're going to have more pleasure just available in the rest of your body, and more sensation for everyday activities, like just sensory sensation. So those are some of the ways that it helps you in your life. Other questions right now? Robin had a question about sexual energy being tied to money. There are some lineages that think sexual energy is really closely tied to money, and we can see it, I think, especially in, it makes some sense. I can't say that I can speak to how that's directly tied in any sort of like actual like empirical way that's evidence-based. But certainly there are some philosophical lineages, especially in the East, that think that sexual energy and money are tied. But you can see how it would be tied through creation, because life force energy and creation make a lot of sense. So if you're creating and you're creating value, and one of the ways that we as humans organize value is through money, then that connection, I think, makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I want to offer that. So one of the best ways to stay energized and connected to your body, even when you're not being like explicitly sexual, is through touch. And a lot of times people, we aren't really trained how to touch or how to be touched or how to talk about how we want to be touched. So if you have any desire to improve that experience for yourself, either giving, receiving, or both, I have a free mini class on my site that you can get about that. And you can do it solo or with a partner. So I just want to invite any last minute questions, and then I'm going to turn it over. Okay, well, I will be here at the end, so you can ask questions if you want to save any up. And I thank you so much for being here. I am so glad to be here today. Okay, turning it over.
Laura, I'll just say really quick, I Love that. That was really amazing and powerful for me. Especially just because like I didn't expect that. But when you started talking about like walking out of the attic, I was just like, oh my God, you're just gonna make me cry right now. Cause it brought up so much stuff for me that again, like, and it was neat feeling to like kind of walk down the staircase and through the house. But like for me as a kid, like I had experiences where I was like locked in the attic and as a kid by myself up with like all the insulation. It was just dark in this tiny little attic and like and I would just be there for, you know, the whole afternoon hours or whatever until my parents would come home from work and I would get like let out by my brothers who wanted my Nintendo time. So that was just like the convenience place to put me. But like just noticing that like that it's so interesting how just again, like when you connect to the body, like what comes up, right? That you just don't even realize might even be in there. And just like that, just that word and just that very like, okay, we're gonna walk out of the attic. It just completely brought up that emotion of me like leaving, but not just being let out of the attic, but like of my own sovereignty. Like I'm leaving this attic and like being able to step into like being seen and just so much stuff. So thank you. Still things I'm working on, right? Oh, I'm so glad I did this summit. Right? It's been such an amazing experience for me doing this, like with all of these presenters. You guys have been so amazing. And it just feels so cool to be supported by such a community. And I hope for all of you that are watching that you get to have some of that in the Facebook group and hear all of these coaches love you so much. They're here for you. They have their own businesses and their own lives. They don't need to do this. So I'm just so grateful for you guys coming and being a part of this. And I hope that all of you that are watching will feel comfortable to reach out either in the group or to our emails or our websites. Just know that we're all here for you. And there's just so much neat stuff that you don't expect to happen. Like, I didn't expect that to happen today. But isn't it amazing when you just show up and fuck around and find out, like Kristen says, right? Just show up. Who knows what you're going to find? You never know what's going to happen when you open yourself up to a new experience. So I invite you into that exploration and see what might be here for you. So thank you, Laura and Jess. And next up, we have waiting Mr. Dex Randall. And Dex is here to talk about how to champion yourself, right, through the challenges. And I'm going to let Dex introduce himself and share what he has for you. But feel free, Dex. Take it away.
Thank you, Robin. Hello, everybody. It's been really quite a powerful presentation until now. I've been, it's very early in the morning here, but I've been watching. Anyway, what I wanted to, my name's Dex Randall. I work with professional men to recover from burnout and to go on to develop heart-centered leadership. And because today what we're really talking about is the shadow side and mental health. And really some of you perhaps are struggling with your own mental well-being, or somebody dear to you is also struggling. And I think really how I can best support that is there is a way where we're not getting the support in this stigmatized society around mental health. We're not getting the support many of us would like, but there is a way that we can begin to support ourselves much more strongly. And the power of that really is we don't have to depend on others to come to the party. All the people we're waiting for to support us may or may not arrive, but we ourselves can actually uplift the way we relate with ourselves. And I find personally, this makes a really big difference to how we get through our day to day. So that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit today. There is a worksheet associated with this presentation. So I'm going to ask you a lot of questions today about yourself, about how you approach your difficulties and challenges, whatever they may be. So that worksheet's going to be in the chat box as well, I think, in a minute. So if you or somebody you know has mental health challenges or mental well-being challenges or emotional challenges, if in the world you feel a little bit unsupported, a bit neglected, stigmatized, perhaps rejected, or whatever. And if you have sometimes low resources or low confidence or low resilience, this is a little bit about how you can support yourself in those times back to thriving in life, regardless of your kind of internal experience, I would say. And I call this process championing yourself. So I'm not really going to talk about how to deal with yourself in a practical way when you get up in the morning, how to do or be able to do some of the things that you need to do. This is more about emotional self-support. It's about creating a good, livable experience of yourself as you work with your abilities and your constraints each day. And I think the backbone of this work, for me, I borrow the expertise of Dr. Gabor Mate, who some of you may know, and particularly he proposes in his book, The Myth of Normal, that any apparent mental health affliction is in fact a coping mechanism. So it's usually a coping mechanism for early life trauma or for insecure attachment we may have had. But I think because of this, it's helpful to look at ourselves and our behaviors and our difficulties as actually adaptive. They are trying to work for us, not against us. So whatever your mind and body may be doing, it comes from a base intention of self-protection and healing and care. The body's intention is always to heal. So, and that includes the features of things like depression, anxiety, eating disorders, self-harm, ADHD, and so on and so on. So please, if you have those kinds of difficulties, never believe you are broken or that your body and mind are working against you. And in fact, if you're interested, I do recommend reading The Myth of Normal to find out if there are concepts and ideas in there that support and empower you in your healing journey, because that's kind of how it worked out for me. Because I think really there is an unseen path forward where you can champion yourself to live your best life, whether you get the external support you'd like or not. And so when I work with people in burnout coaching, I coach on heart-centered leadership, because underneath the burnout, the people that I work with are big-hearted, altruistic, generous people. They're just suffering quite a bit. And so when I work with those people towards heart-centered leadership, I do it on the basis that the heart is always enough to live by. And I think the body is always enough to live by as well. The body is trying to heal. So this is a little bit where Laura was going in her presentation, is we can afford to be in touch with our body. It is a nourishing way to live, to come home to who we actually are. And if we're not willing to be present to who we really are, then we're losing a little bit of our power day to day in our lives. So what I would offer here is that heart-centered self-leadership is available to you in the face of any challenge your mental health may throw up for you. And I think of it like this: if we want to take this heart-centered self-leadership journey, we need three things. The first one is we need to find the impulsion to even allow our heart to take over and drive our lives. Because at the moment, that's probably not what's happening. Number two is we need to protect ourselves from any knocks we experience on the journey by offering ourselves, our tender hearts, the support and encouragement that we need. And number three is we need to reconnect with our heart and our bodies and our emotions directly, be very gently present to our human experience, our whole human experience. So I'm going to go through those three a little bit. The first one, finding the will to kind of pilot yourself positively through the challenges of life from your heart, is perhaps a little bit daunting at the beginning, because most of us who are suffering, who are in pain, who have incapacities and lack of strength, exhaustion, we can be very shut down. So I think what we need is a really strong reason to choose to champion ourselves from our hearts. I personally think all of the greatest human endeavors come from our heart and soul. That's the energy we need. But embarking on the journey of opening the heart, when we've been a bit shut down, we need to find the bravery to do that. We have to rustle up a really big reason to do it, a really big driver, a really big why, so that we're brave enough to take the journey. So I think in the beginning, it's about asking ourselves if we want to do that. And then looking inside ourselves, okay, what would my compelling reason be to trust my heart and to let it guide me through my life, rather than my subconscious mind, my habits, my fears, memories of hurt from the past, seeing myself as a victim and waiting for someone else to come and rescue me. You know, none of those are going to put the power back in your hands, which is where the power belongs. All of those kind of default positions are just keeping us helpless if we stay there. So because of that, my driver is, no matter what other people think about me, I choose to see myself as enough, worthy, and worth protecting, worth championing. So I'm prepared to look after my own life. I really want to take care of my wounded inner child, if you like, my difficult memories, my pains, my challenges. I find myself worthy of being cared for, and I'm willing to do the caring. So I think underneath that, really, for all of us, if we're prepared to make the decision to be enough to champion ourselves, to take the law into our own hands, and then to decide to invest our energy only into being enough, not focusing on what's wrong, but focusing on power that we can develop to be the champion of our own lives. So that's kind of, I've done a fair bit of work on this, and that's where I've put my energy, and that's what I think about now. I think about how can I optimize and maximize the good bits, not how can I get rid of the bad bits. Okay. So my idea is, if we want to make a decision to be enough, that is simply a declaration. I can make that declaration about myself anytime. So it might seem a bit daunting and a bit scary, but when you think about the alternative of staying how things are, if you're in suffering and pain, it kind of puts it in a different light, because heart energy is always uplifting and positive. So to me, I kind of worked my way through that. I tried to paint both pictures. Here's my past and my suffering and how I've related with it and how I've focused on the difficulties. Here's my heart. It wants to lead me out of the woods. Will I let it or not? So can I make that declaration, first of all, that I'm worth worth caring for? Can I make the declaration, I am enough? And you can look inside your heart for the answer. The way to ask yourself this, if you're in fear and doubt and worry and it sounds too much, is ask your heart, say, heart, what do you want me to do? Am I enough or not? And see if you can hear your heart responding. Because I made two conditions with myself at the beginning when I made this choice. I made two conditions under which I would love and support and care for and champion myself. Number one, do I have a good heart? Number two, am I basically well-intentioned? And for me, my personal judgment on that is those two are always true, regardless of my behavior or my capacity to perform. Those two are always true, and that's enough. So I always rest back now on I am enough, because I meet those two conditions. So ask yourself, what are your conditions for declaring that you're enough? What will it take for you to choose to champion yourself? So these questions are in the worksheet, because I think it takes a little bit of self-inquiry, a little bit of quiet time perhaps to consider and let your answers come, and even let those answers mature and evolve over time. So that's why I put the questions in a worksheet. So if you want to take a look later, you can. But I think then also the question is, okay, why is this so hard? Why haven't we done this already? Because it seems like, well, why wouldn't we do it? But of course, we didn't learn this as children. Probably what most of us here today will have been told is, in some respect, that we were wrong or bad. And we would have been shamed or rejected because of that. We would have been fearful because of that. We've probably got traumatic memories of those moments of rejection and shame frozen into our psyche as our inner child. And so this is where I've talked about the behaviors of mental health, the coping mechanisms for that. We developed those coping mechanisms because we didn't have secure attachment as children. It was all a bit dicey. And we were a bit scared that our caregivers were going to reject us. And then that's a survival issue, right? So we developed these coping mechanisms such as perfectionism. That's a good one. We try to be perfect so we'll be accepted. We try to seek acceptance outside of ourselves a lot. We try to seek attention outside of ourselves a lot. And those coping mechanisms, what's happened over the years is they've driven us really, really hard all of our lives to perform, seeking that acceptance and that safety that we don't feel. And now probably, if you're here on this call today, I gotta guess that you're worn out because having those coping mechanisms for a lifetime, trying to get safe, trying to come out of fear, trying to feel okay, it wore me out. And when I'm working with people, it's usually worn them out as well. So something has to give in there, right? And the thing that has to give is our spiritual, mental, physical, and social well-being, isn't it? We descend into illness and separation and isolation, and we have difficulty with connection and communication. So that's what gives, because the coping mechanisms we had as a child were good then because they keep us alive. But as adults, they don't perform quite as well. They don't give us what we want. So none of this is a judgment. None of this is a criticism. This is your organism trying to keep itself alive the best way that it can. But I think, in passing, this idea that we need to become this best version of ourselves, that we chase and chase and chase because we'll feel okay when we're the best version, won't we? We'll be accepted then. That best version of yourself is not something you have to become. If you're straining to get there, you will never arrive because it's who you already are inside of you. And championing yourself is recognizing that. It's recognizing your innate perfection. It's allowing your good heart to be raw and open and receptive and just coming home to rest in the goodness of that. It's a relaxation back into yourself, not a striving to get somewhere else. Okay, so in that way, this exhaustion that we feel trying to gain acceptance can melt away when we start living in our heart the way that it already is, because it's always good enough. So I think that's step one of the journey to heart-centered self-leadership, is finding this compelling reason to champion ourselves, to accept ourselves, to champion our own heart and let it guide us in life. Use that energy, that loving energy that we already have, to guide us and to champion our whole self like no other choice is possible in life, to put our energy there. So Robin's saying, have compassion for your scary part. Yes, if that's how you do, if that's how you relate with it, for sure, for sure. So the second part of that is, if you've made that agreement with yourself that you're willing to champion yourself and let yourself be led from your heart, the second part of it is protecting your already bruised soul from your lifetime of hurt, from the wear and tear of the journey and from the change that comes with that. And you do that by offering yourself, offering your tender heart, the support and protection and encouragement that you need, right? So, because life continues to happen, doesn't it? Even when you lead from the heart. But leading from the heart invites less negativity in. You can't do external damage if you're leading from your heart. You're not going to engage with a lot of conflict if you're leading from the heart. And alongside of this, the other conflict you're going to avoid more is you're going to learn to judge yourself less. So you're not compounding the wear and tear of life with your self-judgment, your self-criticism. So really, the way we're doing this is we're letting that kind of negative self-talk, that inner critic, just recede a little bit and take a back seat a little bit, because we're championing ourselves with our own love. We're seeing ourselves as worthy and choosing self-belief, having our own back, being compassionate, really being kind and loving and accepting towards ourselves. So when we do that, if you make a choice to do that, to be compassionate and caring towards yourself, it's never based on what you do. It's not activity based. We're not being a human doing here. That self-compassion and self-love is unconditional. It's for who we are on the inside, the human beingness of us. Because that's what we committed to in step one, right? If you find yourself enough, then you're enough, right? It's not negotiable later. You're still enough. So really then it becomes, what emotional support do I need? It's becoming aware, if your feelings are hurt, what emotional support do I need most right now? When things are going wrong, or when you're feeling tired or sick, or when you're having a bad day, what emotional support do I need right now? You see, I always put my hand on my chest here because this is my way of connecting my adult external self with my heart, with my inner child, with the piece of me that needs care. So remember, if you are having a bad day, if things are going a bit wrong, if you don't feel capacity today, if you can't do what you're supposed to be doing, remember to be gentle if you're doing your best. So remember not to judge yourself in those moments. Or, and this is true for almost all of us, right? If you catch yourself judging yourself, gently say, oh no, that's not right, and counteract the judgy thought by offering yourself a kinder, more generous thought. And when you do that, you can just say it out loud, because then you can hear yourself saying it. You can actually hear yourself offering yourself that kindness, and your brain will receive that. So I think this is all about looking for the gift in your imperfection, looking behind this surface behavior that you've just judged for the true heart that still remains inside. And everybody I've ever met has that true good heart. I've never met anybody who didn't have it. I'm willing to be proved wrong one day, but it hasn't happened yet. So when we go back inside to that and see the good that's still in there, the good intention that's still in there, it might prompt us to counteract the inner critic telling us we're not doing well enough. And it's a choice. We just can develop a new habit to do that. Okay, Amber says, I remind myself by saying, oh, that's so human of you. Beautiful. Because we are. I mean, for those people who've been trained at the life coach school, we've had drummed into us 50% positive emotion, behavior, etc., 50% negative, and that's completely fine and will never be overridden, but it doesn't matter because we're still good. We're still human. And we don't need to transcend that or get rid of it or obliterate it, smash it to pieces. Because remember, so coming back to when we develop these coping mechanisms in the first place, remember that little child you who was so scared, vulnerable, who needed a champion. Well, that kid, that inner child is still living inside you and still needs to be safe and held and cared for. And you can be that champion to yourself. You can hold yourself, that inner child, that suffering, that emotional wave that comes up. You can hold all of that in the warmth of your own heart. And I think that's something I didn't learn until probably fairly recently. I mean, you could describe it as reparenting that child. It's another way of looking at it. But being present to your own suffering and caring for yourself in that moment, I've found when you develop that habit is a very powerful antidote to the emotional upheaval and stress that we can feel when we're reflecting our thoughts out into the world and what we think the world thinks about us. Sarah, I just learned this and I'm 50. Exactly right. Yeah. Took me a long, long time myself. And so really step 2 then, I think, is protecting yourself, your inner child, from the wear and tear on the journey of growth and change. Because as we know, change is something that provokes resistance in human beings. We don't like change. On the survival level, change is resisted. But we don't have to resist it. There is a way we can be holding ourselves inside that change. Because with our prefrontal cortex, we can see that we're going in a good direction, right? And then the last piece of the equation, I think, is to reconnect. So this is coming back to a little bit what Laura was talking about, is reconnect with our heart, reconnect with our body, with our emotions, and be really fully, but very gently present to our human experience. We can come back home and live in our bodies again, which so many of us who've been traumatized or had mental health concerns, we've escaped from our body. Well, there's an opportunity here to come back home and find our body a good place to live, discover freshly that it's possible to live in our body. And in fact, there's some upsides to that we haven't had, perhaps lately. Because when you come home to yourself, when you come home to your heart and your body and your emotions, you are going to feel your emotions. Maybe they've been in the deep freeze for a while. Mine were in the deep freeze for decades. So when they came home, it was a little bit lively and a little bit uncomfortable. You're going to have a lot of emotions when you come home initially, especially those you've been trying to avoid, whatever they were. So if we're going to be willing to open our heart and feel our emotions, we will need to gently stop the resistance and just let those emotions be. Let the vibrations of the emotion come into our body and pass through, just energy passing through the body. So if it's a bit uncomfortable, we have to remember at that point that it's okay to allow that discomfort a little bit, because the intensity will go down once we get used to feeling our emotions fully. And also, there's no such thing as a good or bad emotion. Emotions, every one of them has a purpose within us. We don't need to judge them. Because as well, we abandoned self-judgment in step 2 of this process, okay? So this is about feeling anything, feeling everything, and letting that be okay, even if it's an intense experience. And just holding ourselves through that, because of the novelty value of letting our emotions flood in can be overwhelming. So we either can find a safe other to do this with, or we can make ourselves safe to have these emotions, probably not while we're at work or something like that, but as a continuing practice. Because now when we're protecting ourselves, when we're protecting our vulnerable heart and our tender emotions, we can create a little bit of space for that to happen. And one thing that I was taught when I was in a lot of anger, somebody said to me, well, just feel 5 minutes of it on purpose every day, right? Have your anger 5 minutes each day, let it all come to the surface, and know that at the end of 5 minutes, you're going to stop and walk away, because then that stops it being endless and overwhelming, a deep ocean that you're going to get lost in. So that can be a good exercise to do if emotions come up that you're not very comfortable around. So this is really, when we start allowing our emotions and becoming comfortable with our emotions, what we're doing is we're broadening our emotional capacity, and we are deepening our personal experience of what it is to be human. We're kind of letting go of the compartmentalization a little bit of who we were. And this is heart-centered self-leadership, is inhabiting the fullness of who you are and finding it good and worth protecting. Because, okay, Sarah, with practice, even the intensity is still high. I've learned that it's okay, I can handle it. Exactly that. You're fully equipped as an adult to handle it. I used to be, Sarah, again, I used to be afraid to cry, thinking it would never stop, but it does. Yeah, it doesn't last forever like we think it will. I was the same with my anger. I thought once I let it out the bag, I would never be able to put it back in the bag. Because it had been forbidden to me since I was very, very young. I was told never to be angry, so I bottled it up for decades. But I think that's not the way it works. So the fear that we can have these little experiments, titrate it out, as a friend of mine says, not a million miles from here. Anyhow, so this is, if this is about heart-centered self-leadership, yeah, feeling them as vibrations neutralizes it some. Yeah, exactly that. So the best heart-centered leaders are not really those brittle, invincible ones who need to be always right. They're not the people who pitch themselves up here and sit on top of a mountain. The best heart-centered leadership comes from a heart that is willing to tenderly embrace everything that that person is. Embracing everything that you are without apology is a massive strength, because actually it makes you less brittle, less vulnerable. When you can accept everything about yourself, you are much less vulnerable to external opinion or adverse commentary from the outside world. You get to relax a lot more in who you are when you can accept yourself more fully. So that's the direction of travel that we would go in when we're looking for self-leadership, is to be able to accept more and more about ourselves so that we're very rarely caught offside, if you like. Embracing everything you are is a massive strength, Sarah. Yeah, it really super is. It makes everything a lot easier in life, because we don't get reactive when other people say things. And to be honest, I would use Brooke Castillo as an example of this, because it's very difficult to catch her offside. She'll just agree and laugh. Like when people criticize her, she'll just agree and laugh. She's already seen and accepted that in herself, whatever the thing is. Anyhow, so I think of this, if we agree that we're enough, then our emotions too are enough, right? We're enough in our emotions. So self-acceptance includes all of our emotional landscape. And it also includes our coping mechanisms, whatever they look like, whatever our behaviors are. It includes any kind of behavior that the external world might judge. And it includes processes like addiction, another coping mechanism. So we can accept all of that, because all of those mechanisms and addictions and behaviors like that are actually there to avoid pain and suffering and to keep us going. So when we allow them to be there, to just simply be there, they'll actually play themselves out a little bit too. They'll actually pipe down a little bit, they'll recede a little, because we won't need them so much anymore. We won't need those coping mechanisms anywhere near as much once we have full self-acceptance and self-care. So again, that's the direction of travel for me. And I'm still on this journey the same as everyone else, right? I'm not saying I'm this beautiful nirvana and my life is peachy. I'm still a work in progress, but I find these concepts have really supported me to make my own day-to-day existence easier. But really because when we're protecting ourselves, we got this ocean of self-acceptance. We don't need to put ourselves in the wrong for having a feeling, for having an opinion, for having a behavior, for having a reaction. And if we don't put ourselves in the wrong for all of that, we don't compound our suffering. And that really creates this psychological safety that we would really like within us. So ask yourself, is that what you want for yourself? Because you get to create that, whether the outside world comes to the party or not. Because I think really we're all born perfect, right? Any interpreted behavior that we brand as negative or unhelpful or bad is just coming from the pain and the suffering and our coping mechanisms for that. So still underneath everything, we have this good heart. We're still innately perfect. And then we can give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. Oh, if I'm perfect and I did this terrible thing, well, maybe I was just operating out of pain, and next time I won't do that. I'm self-aware, but I don't need to cast myself out for it. So step 3, feel everything, reconnect with this full, vibrant human experience, with what's happening in our body, what's happening in our hearts, letting our hearts be a little bit tender and open and vulnerable. because really when we can't suppress individual emotions. So when we let in all those feelings we've been trying to avoid until now, we also let in joy, delight, contentment, wonder, love, all of the positive emotions we've been missing as well. So I think those 3 steps, in one quick sentence, can you say what steps 1 to 3 are? Well, I can. So number 1 is to create the impulsion to even allow our hearts to drive the journey, because it's always been our heads probably until now. So just to make a decision, how am I willing to champion myself? Why would I do that? Will I let my heart lead me? 2 is to protect ourselves from the knocks on the journey. So this is taking care of our emotional needs. And 3 is reconnecting with our heart and body directly and our emotions directly, so we can be present to our human experience. It's actually in the PDF, this is summarized a little bit if you would like to do that. Oh yeah, and Sarah's just put it in the chat box, which is good. So that's what I have for you today. But really, I think the one-liner is your heart is already good. It's already true. It's already strong enough to support you. So just see if you can sense a little bit that courage. Your heart has enough love for you. So really, are you going to let it do its thing for you? Thank you, Robin.
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome, Dex. I appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions for Dex? Or I guess, I mean, we're sort of here at the end, so we've got 20 minutes. If anyone, I mean, if anyone has any questions, wants any coaching, anything that you guys want to ask or share, we've got about 20 minutes left. And so we've got a little time for that. If there is anything. And for those of you that are going to be watching these replays, as we've already said a couple times, you can feel free to post inside the Facebook group. These replays are going to be posted for you all, so you can just comment underneath the thread and just, hashtag question or hashtag coaching. And feel free to ask any questions for Dex, myself, Jessica, or Laura. I have full confidence and faith they will be more than willing to message you in there and answer any questions you have or clarify anything. So that's also 100% available. Is there anything else that any other of the other coaches, presenters want to say or have to contribute here as we wrap up? I don't see any questions coming in the chat box here. I think all of you guys caught those questions as you were going. So thanks for offering the summit. This has been so great so far. Absolutely, Tammy, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. This was a wonderful day. Super amazing. I got a 10 out of that, and I can't wait for tomorrow. That's all I have for anybody. I just mainly wanted to leave a little space for Q&A and live coaching if anybody had anything. So if not, we can call it good, and we will see you all tomorrow at noon Pacific Standard Time, same channel. Easy peasy. All right. I love you all. I'm going to go ahead and turn off this recording then.